Why are teachers raping, sexually assaulting, and grooming kids in Chicago schools?
Complaints were filed against teachers, custodians, security guards, and school vendors. They included everything from being friends on Facebook to sexual acts on campus.
Hey guys, my name is Jason Wesley, and this is not a podcast. So Breitbart is reporting hundreds of Chicago teachers raped, sexually assaulted, groomed students in 2022. According to a report released by Chicago Public Schools Office of the Inspector General, the 2021-22 school year saw 772 investigations into teachers for allegedly raping, sexually assaulting, or grooming students. The office was able to close 600 adult-on-student cases in the past year and substantiated more than half of the allegations. Despite that, only 16 of the cases have resulted in charges. Some cases involve taking trips to Vegas, Ibiza, London, and the Bahamas for sexual purposes. I never remember any of my high school teachers offering to take me on lavish trips to Vegas, Ibiza, or London, or the Bahamas. And I'm not saying that my 13-year-old self would have said no, but what I am saying is my parents would have whooped my ass. Like, what parent is agreeing to this? Do these kids just tell their parents they're going on a field trip? While the majority of cases involved high school students, some involved children as young as the 4th grade. As Rush would say, for those in Rio Linda, that's 9 years old. Some texts between the staff member and the student were highly sexual, including, "I'm ready to F right now. I'm not going to be gentle either." The staff member also threatened to kill the student and her family if she told anyone about the relationship. Yet another incident involved a teacher asking a 4th grade student why her lips were chapped and then stated that the student's lips were chapped because she was sucking a 4th grader. And you wonder why parents show up to school board meetings pissed off, even though the Biden administration wants to label them domestic terrorists, at the behest of the request of the teachers' unions. Remember when the Biden administration proposed removing Trump-era data collection on sexual assaults committed by teachers? The Department of Education is proposing to roll back attempts at collecting additional data on teacher-perpetuated sexual assaults, prompting concerns about transparency in reporting faculty misconduct. Data collection under last week's proposal would continue to include the number of documented incidents at a given school, but would retire Trump-era reporting on rape or attempted rape or sexual assault allegations that were followed by a resignation or retirement prior to final discipline or termination. An education department spokesperson defended the move as a way to, quote, reduce burden and duplication of data. What is wrong with these teachers' unions nowadays? It appears that they don't give a damn about the students, and it's disgusting. In California, teachers' unions want the students to be able to transition and get hormones without parental consent. The Epoch Times reporting February of 2020, minors may get sex changes without parental consent if California's teachers' union has its way. On January 26, CTA changed an existing policy to explicitly include transgender and non-binary youth among the students who can leave class without parental permission to receive birth control, abortions, and other such services. The rationale states current interpretation of California state law does not allow trans students to begin gender identity confirming hormone therapy without the consent of both legal guardians. However, it does allow for cis minors to receive hormones without the barrier of parental permission. This inequity of decision-making forces some children to go through the wrong puberty and can negatively impact the child's mental health. Doesn't that sound like the exact rationale and ideology pushed by the current Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services, Rachel Levine, formerly known as Richard Levine?
We give a medicine to block the progression of puberty, so you don't go through the wrong puberty.
How about this one? California changes sex offender law to be inclusive to LGBTQ community. In September, a new law signed by California Governor Gavin Newsom amends a former law by giving judges discretion on listing an individual as a sex offender if they have consensual anal or oral sex with a minor aged 14 or older. This type of judicial discretion is already granted in the statutory rape cases involving a man who has vaginal sexual intercourse with a minor. It didn't include circumstances in which an adult engaged in consensual oral or anal sex with a minor. The old law was considered by many to discriminate against young LGBTQ individuals who engage in relationships with minors close to them in age by forcing them to register as a sex offender when heterosexuals in the same situation weren't required to register. Controversy still surrounds the law, however, because it allows a 10-year age gap in these relationships. Some opponents claim that the law protects pedophilia no matter whom it applies. The law was created for situations like those in which two teenagers are in a relationship and one reaches the age of 18 before the other. However, those against the law point out that it could also apply to a 24-year-old having sex with a 14-year-old, which they feel is unacceptable. Now, I called this over 15 years ago, and people said, oh no, it won't ever get that far. But here we are. We can't call pedophiles what they are because of the stigma around the word pedophile. We have to call them MAPs, also known as minor attracted persons. And side note, I don't give a damn about a stigma around pedophile. Just like there's a stigma around murder. You shouldn't do it. And every pedophile needs to meet Lorena Bobbitt, in my opinion. But now, before I bring up this last clip, I want to remind you that the promotion of pedophilia has been massaged into the American psyche for quite some time. Here's Don Lemon with CNN over 10 years ago.
I did kind of feel a bit sorry for him, even though I know the jury found him to do some horrific things. I was like, you know, his life is over. All of these young boys, it was terrible for them as well. There are no winners. In your piece, you say someone has no choice to be a pedophile, but someone can choose to not be a child molester.
Now, listen to this video that's gone viral on TikTok of a licensed professional counselor and sex therapist humanizing pedophilia.
Folks, my name is Miranda. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and sex therapist in Erie, Pennsylvania. And today I want to talk about minor attracted persons. And I want to talk about minor attracted persons because they are probably the most vilified population of folks in our culture.
There's a reason for that. Leave the kids alone.
Most folks are making incorrect assumptions about them without actually knowing much about them. And those assumptions create harm for an already marginalized population.
Well, damn, I can be married and attracted to my neighbor's wife, but that doesn't mean that I pursue her. But again, this is where the ideology is more important than the morality. Now, I'm not going to get into the chai boys or sex trafficking across the southern border of the United States, or any of the people rescued from sex slavery from Operation Underground Railroad, but I've mentioned that in other episodes at one point in time or another. But why do we call them pedophiles? Pedo before vowels, ped, word-forming element meaning boy, child, from Greek pedo, and phile, also phil, word-forming element meaning one that loves, likes, or is attracted to, hence the word pedophile, one who likes, loves, or is attracted to children. Now, it's one thing to argue that these abusers need help, because they do. Many abusers were once abused themselves, but there's a difference between arguing for understanding and blaming others for judging them, or trying to make me feel guilty for rejecting in the harshest terms possible the subjugation of our most innocent, our children. Now, this is a pathological psychological disorder which in many cases is passed on from the abuser to the victim, and she and others like her are trying to normalize pedophilia, and no one has a right to judge these acts, apparently. You're just supposed to sit there, understand, and shut up, you bigot. Now, what happens psychologically when you put a child in the position of sitting there and shutting up and believing that this kind of behavior is normal?
We are all people first with many different facets or parts of ourselves, and this includes folks who are attracted to minors.
Now, when the child is approached by a pedophile and touched or manipulated or coerced into doing a sexual act with an adult, they're less likely to report it because they don't want to be seen as a bigot, or because they've been taught on social media or in the school system that this type of behavior is normal. They'll begin to blame themselves and the cycle will start all over again. Then comes the medication. That's if suicide doesn't come first. But hey, if you live in Canada and you're a child, you've already been provided a children's book on assisted suicide. So pretty soon, suicide will become normal as well.
Are you a boy or a girl? And Nash answers, I'm just a kid.
But kids can be boys or
They can be boys or girls. Yeah.
Or maybe non-binary.
Yeah.
It was just like non-binary, yeah. That's just something that we know. This is something, I mean, it's like they're 4 and 5 years old and they just didn't make a big deal out of being a boy or a girl.
Yeah, just like me. So Nash, just like me, is non-binary. So they aren't sure if they're a boy or a girl. So when people ask them, are you a boy or a girl? Right now they just feel like saying, I'm a kid. They're figuring it out.
Leave the children alone.
Will you be my alibi?